You told yourself you were done thinking about them, and then you looked at your phone, mid-thought, mid-breath, mid-nothing, and it was there again. 11:11. Not the first time this month. Not even the fifth. You didn't call it a sign. You called it a coincidence, the way you've been calling a lot of things coincidences lately, because believing otherwise would mean admitting something you haven't said out loud to anyone. You weren't even thinking about them when it happened. That's the part that unsettles you most. It wasn't during a memory. It wasn't while replaying an old conversation. It was in an ordinary, unguarded second, the kind where your mind is supposed to be empty, and somehow the number found you there anyway, in the one place you thought you'd finally gotten quiet. So the question isn't really what 1111 means. You already suspect the textbook answer. You've probably read it before, somewhere, in passing. What you actually want to know is harder to ask. Why now? Why after weeks of telling people you're fine, of deleting the photos, of not checking their name? Why does the number keep choosing this exact chapter to appear in? Here is what almost no one says about moving on. It is rarely one clean decision. It is 100 small unfinished ones, stacked quietly on top of each other, and most days you can carry them without noticing the weight. Then a number repeats itself at exactly 11:11, and for a second the weight becomes visible again, not because the universe is testing you, because some part of you had been holding a door slightly open, and the pattern simply walked past it. Within numerology, 1111 is often described as a threshold number, a doorway rather than a destination. It doesn't usually mark the ending itself. It marks the moment right before something is allowed to end, when the old version of a story and the next version of it are standing close enough to touch. That's a strange kind of symbolism to sit with, because it means the number isn't asking you to look backward at them. It's asking you to look at the space between who you were before they existed in your life and who you've become since. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. Because when this number appears while you're thinking of someone, it's easy to assume it's a message about the person, about reconciliation, about being remembered. That interpretation feels good for exactly as long as it takes to check your phone and realize nothing has changed there. But there's a quieter possibility, one that doesn't need them to respond to anything at all. Maybe 1111 isn't circling around them. Maybe it's circling around you, the self you were mid-becoming when they entered, and the self you're mid-becoming now that they've left. You don't fully believe you're over it. You've said the words to friends, to yourself in the mirror, maybe even typed them to someone new. But belief and timing are different things, and grief has never once respected a deadline you set for it. This is the part no one warns you about. You can make the right decision, walk away for the right reasons, and still find yourself thinking of them at inconvenient hours, in unguarded seconds, while the clock quietly repeats a number that seems to know exactly when to interrupt you. There's no shame hiding in that, only information. Think about the last time it happened, not the number itself, the moment around it. What had you just been doing? Who had you just spoken to? Was it a quiet evening where your guard was fully down? Or was it right after seeing something that reminded you of them without warning? The number rarely arrives in isolation. It arrives inside a moment, and the moment is where the real message tends to live, not in the 4 digits. In what you were carrying when you noticed them. Some people will tell you 1111 means they're thinking about you too, that the number is proof of a connection still active somewhere between you. That's a comforting story, and comfort isn't wrong to want. But it isn't something a repeating number can promise, and building your peace on top of someone else's unknown thoughts is its own quiet trap, one that keeps the door open indefinitely, waiting for a knock that may never come. If 1111 is a threshold, the more honest question isn't whether they're standing on the other side of it. It's whether you're finally ready to walk through it yourself. There's a specific kind of guilt that comes with not being over someone as fast as you announced you were. You told your friends you were fine within weeks. You posted like everything was normal. You believed, for stretches at a time, that you had genuinely moved on. And then a memory would surface out of nowhere, uninvited, and you'd wonder if you'd been lying to everyone, including yourself. That guilt deserves to be named plainly. Healing was never supposed to be linear, no matter how many people around you make it look that way. Numerology tends to associate 1111 with awakening, a heightened moment of self-awareness, a nudge to notice what you've been avoiding examining directly. In this context, that doesn't mean waking up to the fact that you still miss them. You already know that. It means waking up to why the missing hasn't fully released yet. Sometimes it isn't the person you're grieving. It's a version of your own life that existed while they were in it. A routine, an identity, a sense of being chosen, a future you had quietly started picturing without meaning to. Losing a person often means losing an entire imagined timeline alongside them, and that timeline doesn't disappear just because the relationship did. This is where the number stops being about them at all, and starts becoming a mirror instead. Ask yourself honestly, the next time it appears, is it their face you see, or is it the life you thought you were building? Because those are two very different things to mourn, and only one of them requires waiting for someone else to come back. There's a psychological layer worth sitting with here too, one that doesn't cancel out the mystery, only adds texture to it. The mind is remarkably good at noticing patterns that feel emotionally significant, especially during periods of unresolved feeling. That doesn't make the experience meaningless or accidental in the way it feels. It may simply mean that 1111 has become emotionally linked, in your own private associative memory, to the exact question you haven't let yourself finish asking: am I actually at peace, or am I just quiet about it? The number isn't inventing that question, it's surfacing it. So what happens if you stop treating 1111 as a hopeful signal about them and start treating it as an honest checkpoint for you, not a countdown to a reunion? Not proof they're missing you back, a doorway you get to walk through on your own schedule, at your own pace, without needing their permission or their return to make it real. Closing a chapter rarely happens in one dramatic scene. It happens in 100 quiet, unremarkable moments, one of which might be right now, looking at 4 repeating ones on a clock, and finally admitting what you've been circling around. Not that you don't care anymore, that you're allowed to still care and still walk forward. Those two things have never actually been in conflict. Only your fear that they were. If 1111 has been finding you lately, notice where you are the next time it happens, not who you're thinking about. Where you are in your own life, what you're building, what you're releasing, what you're finally ready to stop waiting on. That answer will tell you more than the number ever could on its own. If this describes something you've been quietly carrying, you might want to write down the moment you noticed it last. Not to post anywhere, just for yourself, as a way of finally naming what you've been circling around. And if there's a number that's been following you in a different chapter of your life, one connected to a decision or a beginning rather than an ending, that story is probably still waiting to be told too.